Okay, welcome back. Okay, time to get to the assignment sheet now for WP2. So, sharing my screen, I'm going to return to our D2L page and scrolling down. Okay, so writing project 2 visual analysis. That's the place that is hosting our WP2 assignment sheet. So, feel free to follow along right here. You can click that and access not this, this right here. Fuck off. Okay, cool. So let's just read through this and then we will get to another example. All right. So WP1 helped you see how other modes can make meaning. And modes, just mediums, right? Genres of writing. The visual analysis assignment will take this further, ask you to break down meaning in visual texts, such as videos and ads. Those are the two most popular ones, right? In videos, I mean like, you know, movies, TV shows, maybe like videos done by like a popular social media content creator, popular YouTuber, popular TikTok account, TikTok content creator. But some of the other ones are a little more difficult to achieve, right? And I'll go over the reason why here in a moment. But it has to be from a visual text, right? That's the focus of this. For it to be a visual analysis, yeah, you need to break down visual text. You need to analyze a visual text. Um, so essentially, you're going to choose three texts that appeal to you and that you find interesting or provocative. And remember, when I say text, I mean the the sort of artifacts that you're analyzing, right? I don't mean a book. I don't mean a paper. Text also refers to visuals. So I mean visual texts, right? That people have authored. Um, and specifically, they need to be still visuals, as in four corners, right? An image, a still image. So what does that mean? If I want to do a commercial, can I not do a commercial since it's a video? If I want to do a movie, can I not do a movie since that's a video? If I want to do a TV show, can I not do a TV show? Of course not. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying though is that your three visual texts need to be screenshots or still images from said source. So if you want to do a movie, great. Do a movie by all means. But you need to pick out three specific scenes, three specific screenshots that you are going to analyze from that movie and write your paper using that as your evidence. And the reason why, the challenge, right, with this, that almost everyone falls into the first time they try doing this paper in this class, this is not a literary analysis paper, right? I said on day one, we are not going to be reading books. We're not going to be talking about symbolism in books and how Ernest Hemingway wrote this and what this means for this character and Fitzgerald's Great Gatsby. This is what Gatsby represents. That's not what we're talking about. And so the same thing goes for these visual texts. This is not a film as literature class. We are not talking about film in the context of a literary analysis. If you're going to choose a movie, you need to talk about the rhetorical elements, which means the real life implications, right? And so to help us maintain focus on that, this next part of the prompt, in particular, these texts should present a stereotype of a certain discourse community. This way we know that what you're focusing on is real people who are being represented in these texts, a stereotype of a certain discourse community. So the previous one that we just looked at, right? Those Coca-Cola advertisements. What were those a stereotype of? There were stereotypes of soda drinkers. That's a discourse community, right? People that like to drink Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola consumers, soda drinkers. That's a discourse community. And that's what I'm talking about with this. Okay? So I don't care about plot summary. I don't want to read a paper. If you choose to do a movie, I am not interested in a paper where you're just summarizing what happens in that movie. You are doing the paper the wrong way. You will not score well. You will not get a good grade if you write a paper that's just a plot summary. This is not about plot. This is about taking still images and making an argument, using those as support for your argument about how those movies or advertisements or whoever it is, whoever the source of the media is somehow contributing to a stereotype of a certain group of people. You'll break down meaning the way we did in the previous advertisement, the Coca-Cola ad, the way you're doing in your discussion board this week with the other Coca-Cola advertisement. You'll identify rhetorical choices in the visual and linguistic parts of the text, and you'll evaluate how effective these choices are at influencing an audience. All right? So that's the paper in a nutshell. Shooting for 1,200 words. It's going to be due the 27th. The drafts, the paper should have the actual images embedded in there, right? So you should insert your screenshots that you're using. So whether it's print advertisements, a la the ones that we were just doing for the Coca-Cola example, or if it is screenshots from a video, you'll include all of those in the paper, right? All three of them. And it can be not no more than three. No more, no less than three visual texts. If you are doing this correctly, if you are being as thorough as possible, conducting a true hyper analysis, you will have no issue reaching the 1,200 words of content. And if you bring in 4 or 5 other images, the only reason folks asked me to do that, 9 times out of 10, it's because they're at 900 words and they can't get to the 1,200 word mark. And so they feel like the solution to that is bringing in another text so they can have another paragraph to analyze it. And every single time we take a look at that draft, we point to things that they're missing, that they're not touching on in their analysis of the other 3 images, of their first 3 chosen images. So be thorough. Thorough is the name of the game, and we're going to keep working on this stuff. We're still going to keep practicing these things. So it'll become more and more clear. There will be another example in this video, as well as we're likely going to take a look at a sample paper too. But 1,200 words is what we're shooting for. And these are, things to keep in mind. Choosing a visual text, identifying a genre and audience, identifying rhetorical choices. But actually, what I want to do that I think will help bring a little more clarity to this, we're going to move over to this document right here. Okay. So as you're starting to think about ideas, hopefully, right? Hopefully you're not expecting anything right now after first hearing about this project. But things to keep in mind, right? So first and foremost, your idea has to be coming from a mainstream source. So what we just looked at, Coca-Cola stuff, is that a mainstream source of media, of content? Absolutely. How do we know? They've got a crazy market share. Everyone knows what Coca-Cola is. Everyone's had a Coca-Cola in their life, right? It's the biggest beverage company in the world. Mainstream source. That's the first thing that is key. Another common mistake that people will do, right? They'll do something like this. Nope. You know, they'll look up something like memes. I put memes in the option list on the assignment sheet because I think that there's an opportunity to use memes and to analyze memes, and especially because memes are always representing people, right? Memes are always something that it's shared between communities of people because it has some sort of like common understanding, right? There's an inside joke in there. So yes, there is oftentimes people represented in memes. But if it's not checking off the first box, which is typically the pitfall of the meme approach, that it's not coming from a mainstream source. Okay. So, I mean, just clicking this one, right? How it feels when you're 8 hours into what should have been a 30-minute job. So you just sit there questioning the meaning of life. I've had people do stuff like this before, right? So I'm like, okay, how is this a mainstream source? It's from at mechanic memes, right? I mean, it's a very niche thing. It doesn't really feel like it's coming from a place of power, of influence, of some sort of governing body or corporate body that really we can accuse of as doing damage in their misrepresentation or negative stereotyped representation of people, right? Ultimately, this isn't powerful enough, right? It's too small, it's not a mainstream source. So this approach nicks it right off the board. It's got to be coming from a mainstream source. Got to be coming because ultimately we're not suggesting that the people are wrong. We're not saying that the discourse communities are wrong. We're not blaming soda drinkers for drinking Coca-Cola. We're not blaming them for liking to drink Coca-Cola. We're not blaming them, for having, whatever habits that other folks might deem unhealthy. We're blaming these mainstream media sources for misrepresentation or lying or manipulating their message or somehow contributing to a cultural attitude that negatively impacts said stereotype discourse community. That's who we're blaming. That's why it needs to be coming from a mainstream place. It needs to be coming from a big source. Otherwise, we can't make the accusation because they just don't have the clout like that, right? So it needs to come from a mainstream source. That's the first thing. Second thing, of course, it needs to be a stereotype discourse community. So think about the ones that you feel like you're a part of. Think about the discourse communities that you're a part of. Okay, we're going to do an example here in a moment with gamers. Gamers. And so already going through your head, right? Whether you play games or not, and I like, I play video games. I'm a gamer. But you already know that there are some very negative stereotypes about the gamer community that exist in our world. And this paper isn't about judging whether or not they're true or saying in favor or against one way or the other. We're already operating on the understanding that these things are negative depictions of these people, right? So our impetus isn't about trying to like dispel this information. Our impetus isn't about like, well, this is bullshit. We need to I'm going to show you that this isn't true. No, we're already operating under this understanding that these things are unfair and untrue. But what we're trying to figure out is where are these things coming from? Where are these sources of information coming from? And even if we can't trace the original origins of it, where do we feel like it is perpetuated? Where are we continuing to see these mainstream sources suggest that these negative attitudes are true representations of these discourse communities? Okay. So it's got to be a mainstream source, got to be uh, perpetuating a stereotype about a discourse community. Number three, you're going to use two visual features of analysis. That's kind of hard to talk about right now without showing you an example, but essentially, right, we're talking about visual rhetoric. And visual rhetoric, just like, just like genre, audience, purpose, these things that are more like conceptual, right? Things that don't really have like a visual manifestation, but are still inherent to like what we tap into when we're conducting a regular general rhetorical analysis. The same thing happens for a visual rhetorical analysis. There are visual features that we can use, that we can point to in order to support our argument, right? So things like facial expressions, right? That's an obvious one. Facial expressions are always communicating something, okay? Things like clothing, right? Things like body language, hair, makeup, right? These things are all visual things that are somehow contributing to a message, to an idea about this person. Other things, other sort of non-human actors, elements that are in the scene, right? Because we're doing a screenshot, and so it could be a screenshot of an entire scene, right? Not just a person, but other elements of set design, production design, lighting, camera work, right? Again, things that are visual features that we can use for analysis. And so we'll go through examples, and I'll show you what other folks have done in the past for this. But you'll use the same two visual features to analyze each of your texts. And that gets us to the last one, the three visual texts, right? We need to make sure that we have no more, no less than three, but you'll use the same two visual features of analysis to look at each one. So it's not like, okay, first text, I'm going to look at body language and makeup. And then the second one, I'm going to look at hair and clothing. And the last one, I'm going to look at production design. No, same two for all three. All right. So let's dig into an example, shall we? Gamers, like I just mentioned, right? And hopefully, you know, the sort of the gears are turning in your heads a little bit, and you're starting to think about, okay, what are some of those negative stereotypes that I've heard reserved for the gaming community? Okay. And I think it's always worth starting the same way we did with the soda drinkers, and we sort of broke down, you know, culture, context, stance. What are those cultural perceptions that play into our attitudes about that discourse community? Focusing specifically on the negative ones, right? We're not writing a paper about, hey, all the good that PlayStation is doing for the gaming community. That's not what this is about, right? We're talking about stereotypes which are inherently negative. So, getting to that. And once again, I feel as though I'm a part of the gaming community. So, me listing all of these things is not me somehow suggesting that these are truths. These are the harmful attitudes that our society holds against gamers. And mind you, ones that every class in each of my semesters of teaching have gone to right away when I ask them what are some negative stereotypes about gamers. All right, so let's get to it. Okay. Uh, so first and foremost, right, we kind of have this attitude that they lack personal hygiene. They don't shower, they don't bathe. They either don't know how to or they don't care to, right? How to keep up their personal appearance, right? As well as the space that they're living in. So a messy living space also contributes to a lack of hygiene. The clothes that they're wearing, additionally, are also repetitive, the same worn out clothing full of holes and you know, covered in dirt and food stains, um, and just like a general lack of attention given to grooming or putting together an outfit, right? That's these are all things that fall under this lack of personal hygiene stereotype, right? Uh, they're basement dwellers, right? They live in their mom's basement. So we get the neck beard here in this one, the smelly neck beard. We get the basement dweller. They're living. They're dependent on their parents because they seem to just ignore other responsibilities, and perhaps their parents are somewhat enabling of their behavior. Okay, they're overweight. They're out of shape. That diet is all about junk food, Mountain Dew and Doritos. Right, that's been the one that's talked about for years. That's the gamer diet, Mountain Dew and Doritos. They're out of touch with reality, okay? So they're jobless. They can't or won't hold down a 9 to 5 or even your most basic job, right? Not even like something like working at a desk job, not even something working in an office or in a corporate position. Simply just like the most the lowest of the low. Not to hate on. I mean, hell, you know, I'm one to talk. I had years and years of working retail and low tier job positions myself, but they can't even hold down those positions, right? They only care about playing the video game. That's why they're out of touch. That's their only sort of connection to the world, right? That's informed their entire personality. That's informed their entire experience is just playing the video game. They're quick to anger. They can't emotionally regulate, right? They're raging. They're throwing their controller. They're taking it out on the game itself. They're taking it out on their friends. They're taking it out on their siblings, their family. Okay. Otherwise, they're closed-minded. They're ignorant. They either don't know how the world works, and that manifests itself in terms of its own sort of, bubble that they live in. But then it also comes out in nasty ways too, right? That there's, you think about those gamer lobbies. I know you've heard jokes about those, seen memes about those gamer lobbies, right? That those transcripts for the Xbox Live servers, those get released, and people are going to prison for hate speech, right? And so they're racist, they're incels, right? They're sexist. These are the ones that folks typically gravitate towards. Okay. So these are the negative perceptions. Not saying they're true, not saying in some cases they're not true, but these are the negative stereotypes that exist. So our job now, if this is an idea that we want to run with, is to figure out, okay, where are we seeing this communicated? Where's a mainstream source that we're seeing this communicated, right? Don't go and show me a news article where it's like some gamer like beat his dog because he was raging on the, Fortnite campaign and then use that to somehow communicate that this is a stare. Nope, that's not what we're doing. We're talking about media. We're talking about depictions of people. Okay, so we're talking about dramatizations. All right. So think advertisements, think movies, think TV shows. Here's our example. We're going to watch this advertisement from Xbox from back in the day, '02. All right. So yeah, it's going to be a little bit tone deaf, but bear with us. We will watch this ad. Let's plug this.
I got into Xbox Live. I have this really great high-speed connection, and I was playing one-on-one NFL Fever against some other players from around the country. Now my gamer tag, my online ID is Dark Master. I was masking my voice. You can use your real voice, or you can pick from a list of voices. I was just being friendly. I mean, I'm not one of those game guys that gets like totally absorbed, you know. Taste it. Let's go. You want some more? You like that, do you? Watch me go. Oh yeah, everybody goes down. Yeah. Pretty soon, I had like the highest score in the country. Actually, I think there was one other person that was above me. I mean, hey, it was no big deal. I don't think so. So I decided to be fun to contact this guy and challenge him. All right, how about it, Crusher? Master and Crusher. Let's see who gets crushed, Crusher. Get away. You. Never to music. Think I lost the football game. How about a different game, homeboy? Well, anyway, one of us suggested playing a different game. Think you can cap my flag? Bring it on, dark gas passer. I thought a team game might be fun, and that some friends that I met online might want to play. You see, Xbox Live has this Optimatch feature, lets you easily find players all over the country who like the same games and levels. I got some boys here who'll make you wish you were never born. I've got Arctic Avenger. Dark Master is in trouble. Buffalo Soldiers. Oh, Dark Master Man. .com. Dark Master. And Sleeping Giants. What's her? All right. Some tail. Oh, come on. All right, Buffalo Soldier, help me. Oh, no. Get back. We're getting killed. Oh, Dog Master. We just barely lost. I think I just got tired, and I had an exam the next day I was busy thinking about. It was all right, though. It wasn't like I was all distraught or anything about losing, you know? I mean, it would have been nice to have won, but hey, you win some, you lose some, right?
Well, I don't know much about all that, but as long as you can fit into that chicken suit, the job is yours.
Okay. So, um, boom. I think we can all agree that these attitudes were absolutely communicated through this advertisement, right? To a T. So now we have a stereotype community, right? If we go through our checklist, our elements of WP2, we need to have a stereotype community. So we want ours maybe to be gamers, okay? We need a mainstream media source. Is Xbox a mainstream media source? Absolutely, right? One of the titans, one of the leaders in video game production. Xbox, absolutely a mainstream source. So first two checked off. Features of analysis. So now the last two is where our focus goes. Well, the ones that stood out to me that would make sense, the visual features that were most evident that I feel like were contributing to this attitude that gamers are any one of these things, right? But perhaps most evident would be the lack of personal hygiene, right? Out of touch with reality, maybe quick to anger. And the ones that highlight that attitude, that stereotype, the body language and set design. So then let's maybe go through some moments in that advertisement where those things were evident. So this is the first one that we picked out, okay? This is about the 30-second mark of the advertisement. And so focusing on body language and set design. Can we use those to support an idea that our gamer characters are being represented as any one of these negative stereotypes? Absolutely. And I think the ones that make the most sense in this one in particular, that lack of personal hygiene. So then it's our job in our body paragraphs and using these two visual features to anchor our argument. Really, what you want to do is have, for each of your visual texts, to have one dedicated paragraph each for both the features of analysis, right? So this first one, right, you'll have one paragraph focused on the character's body language, and the other one, if it's set design or production design, that's what you choose to do. The other paragraph for of analysis will be focused on production design. And again, all about how those things are contributing to this attitude that gamers, in this case, are messy. Okay. So the gamers are messy. The gamers lack personal hygiene. What in this character's body language is communicating that? Well, we can look at something like his clothing, right? And his clothing, well, he's got, boxers on, right? He stands up. It doesn't appear to just be shorts. It looks like he's in his undies, okay? And he's playing the game. Clearly not in a state where he's ready to go outside. Um, Judging based off of the state of the rest of the room, it's more than likely that those clothes are leftovers, are not clean clothes. Perhaps one stained by, some of the food that's left out on the table and on top of the computer over here, right? He's kind of like hunched over in this way where he's, very very interested in playing the game, but almost again to a fault in a way that feels like a little bit uneasy. And it does reach this point later on in the advertisement where he's quick to anger. He can't emotionally regulate after the loss, right? He's like holding the Xbox, looking up to the heavens, asking why. The set design of the room, if we break down everything that's going on in the room, not only is there just food, clothing, crap just thrown everywhere as though, it's communicating a carelessness. We wonder where he sleeps because the bed has a bunch of crap, all over it. It's clear where he eats, but there's definitely like a sort of apathy with how much um upkeep he does, and how much, even though it's clear that he prioritizes gaming and the game more than anything else. You could point to moments where it's like, as much as the game means to him, he still treats it poorly. For one, he obviously doesn't have a lot of respect for technology if he's using his computer over here, his desktop, as a table to host old, moldy food. We can see like some greens coming off of this tray over here, this tray of food. And then once again, later on, when he's got the Xbox in his hands and he's like looking at it and just in a state of disarray. Yeah, he's not necessarily throwing the controller around, but that's also not how you would be treating a device of yours. At least rationally, at least a rational person wouldn't be treating their device like that. And it almost feels like there is a threat of violence, right? That there's any moment where he could switch it on and freak out. So this is an excellent first visual text, right? It's giving us lots of different things that we can use to feed our argument. Another great moment is right here when we call his buddy up, right? Across the street. Okay, so the room, yeah, not as messy, but still, look where he's sleeping. No mattress cover. Awful, right? Again, somehow communicating that his priorities aren't straight. Sometimes no mattress covers communicate, a lack of wealth, communicate poverty. But at the same time, the room doesn't look to be like that of someone who's living in poverty and he's playing the game. So he's got an Xbox. He's got, money enough to play the Xbox. Um, so it feels more so just like uh, a depiction of somebody who doesn't care and doesn't mind to be sleeping on, this uncomfortable mattress, who just can't be bothered to put sheets back on. Maybe he's got clean sheets somewhere. Maybe, I guess there's a pair of pants right there. But maybe he's got clean sheets in the dryer or something, but he just can't be bothered to put it back on. And he's waking up over here, right? He's waking up. This is across the street. The action's all taking place, if this is right across the street from the character over here, I know we're traveling across time zones, when we get those representations of other characters. Um, Less than favorable representations, mind you. Maybe some stuff that might even play into this attitude over here, right? But when we get this character and he's waking up, he's getting a phone call and his friend's telling him to wake up. And you got this guy telling you to wake up who clearly, right, who doesn't have his shit together, clearly doesn't have his life together. But then this guy's getting a phone call telling him, hey, wake up, hop back on the game. What are you doing sleeping in the middle of the day, right? It seems as though it's sun's peak hours over here. It's probably the afternoon. judging by the sun coming in through the window. And his character, right? We got some goofy other elements that just show he's kind of like maybe a little bit absent-minded. The shoes kind of poking out of the dresser drawer. That's not an appropriate place to put your shoes, right? Like in the room, kind of less messy, but still in a state of disorganization. And another note about how he's waking up and who or what he's waking up with. He's waking up with the controller in bed with him. So yeah, this could be implying that he stayed up all night playing the game. If you wanted to take it a step further, he's sleeping with the controller. So going back to this idea that gamers all they care about is the game. They only care about playing the video game. Maybe you could make the argument for this character. It's so much so that there are sexual undertones. He's so close with the game that he's sleeping with it. He's sleeping with the controller. Okay? And you might be thinking that's doing too much, but that's this process of hyperanalysis, right? There are arguments to be made that might make your audience question you. Oh, dude, you're kind of maybe pushing it a little bit. You're reaching it a little bit right there. But that's this process, right? If you don't have someone saying that, you're probably not doing your job, okay? If you don't have someone reading your paper and having an aha moment, being like, oh shit, I never thought of that, you're not doing enough in the analysis. So that's our second text. And then our final one over here, this is communicating this attitude, right? Again, that he's out of touch with reality. That his only way to try to relate to the rest of the world is based off, entirely informed by playing this video game. The whole premise of the commercial is that he's trying to work stories of him playing the video game into that classic resume manipulation thing everybody does at job interviews, which is just bullshit. But his only work experience that he can think of is all playing the game. So it's like, oh, okay, is this dude's first time getting a job? He looks, old enough that he should have had a job by now. He doesn't look like a 16-year-old kid. He might still live with his parents, but he doesn't look to be a teenager. And when we see what's going on in this scene, right? I mean, talk about body language. Well, his facial expression, right? It really says it all. After he's being told over here, the manager's telling him, "Hey, that's great and everything, but we only care about if you fit in this chicken suit. I don't really know about whatever else you were talking about." And that's not even like with the understanding that the managing character sees through his bullshit, right? The managing character might be buying the fact that this guy's got prior experience working jobs and hey, he's spun this yarn over here that seems as though he's got prior work experience in other contexts. But at the end of the day, the only thing this guy cares about is if he fits in the chicken suit. And he's kind of like, huh? Like, bro, how do you not know the job you were applying for? You went and applied for this job. Did you not? And did you not know what job you were applying for? You didn't know that you were just being asked to wear the chicken suit? That you're just going to be a mascot for this, chicken shack company? Again, out of touch. And his facial expression says it all. I love this too. If we bring in set design, the chicken, even the body language of the chicken and the positioning of the chicken is almost looking down upon him. The chicken is very purposefully positioned this way. The chicken suit, the head could have been just off to the side. It could have been, detached from the rest of the body, maybe sitting on the desk or, somehow in the corner of the room. But no, the chicken is positioned in a way that he's taller. He's a dominant character over here in the corner. He's almost like the second interviewer. They're giving life to this inanimate thing. But it's like he's standing in the corner and with a very piercing, glazed gaze, he's looking down on our protagonist over here. He's like, damn, this guy is really, you know, this guy needs to buy a vowel. He is clueless over here. Maybe let's go to the next candidate. So if I wanted to, I could use these three visual texts, these three moments from that commercial, from that Xbox campaign to write my paper. And now it would just be a matter of writing it. It would just be a matter of getting the 1,200 words. But I could use these in my features analysis. I know this is a stereotype. I know this is a stereotype community. If I wanted, because the next thing we're going to talk about is writing a proper thesis statement for this. That I might have waited, but if I wanted to write a good thesis statement for this, in the way that I'm going to ask us to write a thesis statement. And I haven't really talked about that too much yet, but let's just practice it right now. If I wanted to, I could say something like this. Um, the 2002 Xbox Live campaign uses, I think the name of this commercial was Dark Master. That was his gamer tag. So we'll call it the Dark Master. The 2002 Xbox Live Dark Master campaign uses. So the first thing you got to do, right, is you have to name the source of material, right? So when this is coming from Xbox, it's specifically coming from this campaign. So to start your thesis statement, you got to begin with the name of the source. So the 2002 Xbox Live Dark Master campaign uses, and so what's it doing? Well, it's using its features, its visual features. Okay, so we're going to say it uses body language and production design. Okay, so this is the part where you name your two visual features. And what's it doing? Well, it's perpetuating or it's contributing to the stereotype. This is where you bring in the stereotype. And be specific about the stereotype. Don't just say to contribute to stereotypes about gamers. What is that stereotype? The more specific you are, the better it's going to serve your paper. To contribute to the stereotype that gamers are, and here's where you let it all fly, right? So take all of these sort of negative attitudes that you feel like are depicted in your texts and summarize them for the thesis statement. So the gamers are out of touch, um, emotionally stunted, um, unhygienic basement dwellers, something like that. Boom, we talked three different things, right? They're out of touch with reality, they can't control their emotions, and they're messy. And they also live in their parents' basement. Four different things, right? So we summarized all this stuff that we can expand upon once we get to the body of the paper. Once we get to the analysis paper, the part of the paper, that word didn't want to come out. You can expand on all these things, but give me a nice, neat, yet detailed single statement about what that stereotype is in the thesis statement. So the thesis statement should read just like this. The Xbox Live Dark Master campaign uses body language and production design to contribute to the stereotype that gamers are out of touch, emotionally stunted, unhygienic basement dwellers. That's my thesis statement. That's gonna navigate my whole paper. Let's take a look at an example of a paper. So on our D2L page, there is this sample paper. All right. I think I've got it up on my, let's see, is it over here? Bring it up. All right. So just scrolling through this, we see right off the bat that the paper is doing one of the first things that I said needs to happen, which is you have to put the visual texts in the paper itself, right? So we have the images embedded in the paper. Now, what's this paper examining? A stereotype that bodybuilders are disgusting. All right, so let's use our little checklist to make sure it's following all of the rules of this. All right, well, is it coming from a mainstream source? Let's see. Professional bodybuilders and we lay fitness enthusiasts do not belong in the same gym. The typical selfish bodybuilder views it as their prerogative to name and shame you. How dare they? At least this is what Planet Fitness commercials will lead you to believe. So Planet Fitness is going to be the source of the material. Is that a mainstream source? Absolutely. 100%. Planet Fitness, right? Very well known, widely franchised, maybe the most, recognizable gym membership fitness brand that exists today. Drive around, you're bound to find one in some strip mall. So Planet Fitness is the source of the material. What's the stereotype? Well, it says it here in the body paragraph, right? Or in the headline, the title of the paper, that bodybuilders are disgusting. But then we get a little more taste of it, right? Going further on. Planet Fitness commercials garner appeal through attacking anyone beyond their target demographic. They attempt to create a divide between lay gym enthusiasts and professional bodybuilders. Okay, we're starting to get to it. We're still kind of like intro, right? This is a great introduction, a great intro, where you're kind of just like tiptoeing around the subject. But now here's where we're going to get our thesis statement and the next two parts of the checklist. In their commercials, Planet Fitness uses body language and intricate production design to perpetuate the antagonistic stereotype that bodybuilders are barbaric, self-indulging, and judgmental individuals. So at the very end there, we get our stereotype. Bodybuilders are barbaric, self-indulging, and judgmental. Right before it, we get our two visual features of analysis: body language and production design. And as you scroll through, you see the three visual texts the author is using. Now, when we get to the end, this is not a perfect paper, mind you. We get to the end of it, we do see he uses too many. The reason why I granted him access, whatever. The reason why I okayed this is because all of this was from the same moment in the commercial, right? We can see it's all from this like part of the commercial where we've got the yogis on there. And it's almost as though we could see this entire thing being shot as like a wide shot as opposed to like these medium to close-up shots. So for that reason, I allowed him to do it because it wasn't like bringing in a fourth text that's doing something different, right? It was really just different angles of the exact same moment that he's analyzing for this paper. So for that reason, I okayed it, but I'm still going to hold most of us to the 3 visual text limit. At any rate, I'm not going to read this whole paper right now, but go through and read this because it does a good job of sticking to the most difficult part of the paper, which is, once again, using these still images as support for your argument rather than, right, just reading a paper that's summarizing everything that's going on in the commercial. The things that I can't see. I'm not watching the commercial. Your audience is not going to watch the commercial. Your audience is not going to watch the movie. You need to use these 3 texts to give your audience context. But you can't simply just give me a plot synopsis. And so we see that that's not what this author's doing, right? So we've got 2 paragraphs all dedicated to this text right here. And what do we start getting? We get observations. So start with your observations. Start with the things that you're noticing. The trainer's muscles are tense. His arms are far apart. His hands are in fists. His mouth is wide open. His eyebrows are scrunched. What's the significance of all this? We can see that the trainer is angry. Further, we can see the trainer is meaninglessly angry. The trainer is berating the client instead of encouraging her. So we could have just gone straight to this part that the trainer is angry. How can we tell the trainer is angry? Hell, open your eyes. You can see he's angry. But that's not a hyperanalysis, is it? Hyperanalysis, again, it's as though you're explaining it to a child. It's as though you're explaining this to a 6-year-old. Approach the paper like that. So you need to tell me your observations that are cluing us in, that are cluing your reader into this supposition that the trainer is angry. And therefore, that's contributing to them being portrayed as a barbaric individual. You need to tell me that his muscles are tense, that his arms are far apart, his hands are in fists, his mouth is wide open, his eyebrows are scrunched. I need those observations. Those are the little details that I'm talking about, right? He goes on, the client is practicing with poor form, but the trainer seems more interested in yelling at her. The anger, therefore, appears to be targeting her without any additional psychological height benefit. The commercial intentionally contrasts this with the client's scared facial expression. Okay, we could just say the client looks scared. The commercial contrasts it with the client looking scared, but that's not enough. The client looks away from the trainer. The client does not mimic his body language. She appears to be avoiding confrontation, breaking it down. That's what we have to do with this. So that first paragraph, all about body language. Next paragraph, this one is about the rest. It's the set design. It's the lighting. It's the camera angles. It's the use of space. And we get that. We can also analyze the use of visual space in the image. The background shows no one else in sight. We also see perfectly organized weights. Okay, those are his observations. So what? What's the significance of those things? Well, this vacancy and organization imply that no one likes using equipment in the vicinity of the bodybuilder. The space is left intentionally void to heighten the feeling of isolation and doom. The lighting seems completely artificial, lacking warmer hues. The intentional use of lighting suggests that the environment of a bodybuilder is desolate and far from human connection. Excellent, right? So every time you give me an observation, you need to back it up with like, what's the significance of that, right? So observation, the intentional use of light, no, observation, the lighting seems completely artificial, lacking warm hues. What's the significance? The intentional use of light suggests the environment of a bodybuilder is desolate and far from human connection. So it's not just observations, it's not just jumping straight to the conclusions, it's a mix of both. Supporting your argument. That's what this is all about. That's what this is focused on. That's what this paper is all about. It's about building an argument, right? It's about formulating an argument, and it's gonna, definitely lead us to our final one, which would be all about a persuasive paper, but we're far from that point. But at any rate, take a look at this paper. Start thinking about ideas of your own. And that's going to be our focus for the week. I'm going to ask us to post our initial ideas by the end of the week in a little discussion board section. Because although you're still working on WP1, and I don't want to overload us with work for this quite yet, next week we'll get more examples and have more discussion boards going and all that good stuff. But I think it's important to start, considering ideas now. So there will be another smaller discussion board where I simply ask you to give me your idea for the project by the end of the week. Okay, guys. So I'll wrap it up here. Hopefully these are helpful and useful to you. But yeah, let me know if you need anything from me the rest of the week. Bye-bye.